Thank you, Zina. Good afternoon, Coach. The question for you, a bit more time allowed with the team and the squad, the bigger squad, post, obviously that other match last week. Sort of what were the key focus areas for you guys ahead of the Bristol match this Thursday, please?
Yeah, Justin, I think the key thing for us is, of course, to get better from where we were last week, and like I said last week also, it was not an excuse. We knew the challenge that we will have, that we won't have all the time in the world to prepare, So at least now we've managed to get 2 more extra days to be able to add on how we want to play, So it is what it is. So I won't make any excuses about it. So the key thing for us was to get better on the things that we did last week, more especially if you look at how we attacked. When we got an opportunity to get a 22-meter entry on Munster's field, the forwards, they really had a proper game, and how they carried in the meters and how physically they were dominating. I think where we were guilty was the game management. I'm talking about we put ourselves in the right places. I think we tried to play too much rugby in our half, and the conditions also didn't allow, and then we made silly errors there. And that put us under pressure, and we committed some penalties. But this discipline was also not solid, And to give a team like Munster 22-meter entry, you're always going to be under pressure when it comes to the lineouts, and that's exactly what happened. So we're going to have to make sure that we get better in that department for when it comes to kicking game.
Coach, the changes you made rotational, or do you have other game plans or other plans that up your sleeve?
I think it's a bit of both, There are positions where I thought, what, I also need to give other guys an opportunity because we've only got 2 games, And then on the other side also, if you look at the guys that came off the bench, Grant Williams sitting next to me, I think he had a massive impact in the game, So I think that was why now he's promoted to be in the starting lineup. And you look at the forwards, I think the changes that hooker, Joseph Dweba currently is on standby for the Springbok main side because of Malcolm Max has got a bit of a knock in his quad. So Joseph, that's why he's not in the team. I think he's on standby on that side. And then if you look at the guys on the bench, a guy like JJ Kotze was not involved in the team last week. And then Mornay also, Smith also, I think it's fair also to give them some game time, And if you look at a guy like Sazi Sandi, unfortunately, didn't make the cut this week. Came off the bench last week, had a massive impact, And I know it's tough for him maybe not to be in the team, but once again, I wanted to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to showcase what they can do.
Thanks, Zina. How's it, Stick and Grant? Just a question. Salam, brother. Just a question for Stick. The combination of Grant and obviously Shasha, it's quite an exciting combination. You just mentioned now when Grant came on, he made a massive impact with his speed. And then just the excitement that Shasha also brings to the party with in that combination.
Yeah, I think, for example, more especially if you look at both guys have been with the Springbok setup, they understand how we want to play. I think that's going to be the key thing with that combination, because like I said, we were guilty last week where we didn't manage the game very well, So with Grant knowing our philosophy and knowing how we want to play things, knowing what it takes to be at the top, So I think that's going to be a biggest challenge for them. Yes, we do know they've got an X factor, and I always encourage players to bring what makes them special, So, but the key thing for me is when you play in the Northern Hemisphere, you need to make sure that you also play the conditions very well, So that's going to be the biggest challenge for those two. And but once again, the X factor is always welcome from our side, and I'm excited to see what they can do also, And I know Grant has been with us at the Springboks where he's been waiting for his opportunity. So I was actually happy to see him bringing that impact in the game last week. Sasha was with the Springbok. He traveled back with me yesterday the whole day, and for him also, for him to get game time, hopefully they will be in a position to be selected for that England game, that last test match on tour.
Thank you, Zina. Coach Stick, I just got one in English, then a couple in this course later if there's time. Last week I mentioned the impact of not having an open side flanker. You included Eskom there at 6 this week. Do you feel with the 6-2 split you have covered all the bases in terms of backups on the bench, especially in the back line?
Nathan tata ukhumbule kaloku Mark Van Staden.
Angaphendula ngesilungu tata manzi zikhona
Oh, you want English first? Oh, I thought you said it was okay. No, it's fine. No, remember when it comes to Orlando Marco Van Staden, he was supposed to be in the Springbok squad, but he had a rib problem, you know. So he wasn't going to be able to play last week, you know. So I think now with an extra week, he managed to recover well. So we heard a report from our team doctor, Jerome Mampane at the Springboks, that he should be able to play for this week for us, you know. So that's why it was an easy call for us to bring him in, you know. So it's not because of he was not with us last week because of we didn't want him. If he was available to play, surely we would have had him in our squad. So it's always nice to have someone like him. I know perhaps he did a great job last week also at open side. You know, he'll be on the bench still covering also open side. But Marco van Staden, I think he's recovered from his rib injury. And yeah, you know, if it wasn't for that injury, he would have also played last week. So I'm very happy to have him in our squad. And once again, I think the conditions here, they're going to suit him very well, you know, because he's played here last year and he knows the conditions very well. And, you know, if you don't have the weather condition doesn't allow you to play too much running rugby, he'll be able to put pressure for us on the breakdowns, you know, to the opposition, because we also know a team like Bristol wants to keep the ball in hand. So I think it'll be massive for us on defense.
The second part of that question was based on the fact that your bench, do you feel that your backline will be covered?
I think if you look at the challenges we had last week, like I said to you, is that the game was more physical up in front, you know, and I felt like, you know what, with the reserves we had, if you remember last week, we had Grant Williams as a 9 and covering the wing, and then we also had Sanele covering 9 and 10, you know. I think now if you're talking about having a proper proper bench, you know, the forwards that we've got now with Matras joining us, I think it makes sense to have Sanele covering 9 and 10, and then also having a guy like Johan Hussein covering 10 and 15 with the Sasha, who can also roam between 10 and 12, and Cornell. So I think the more balanced team that we could have had was to go for 6-2 split. Otherwise, that means I would have if I had to go now to 5-3, that means I must select Herschel on the bench again, and then you'll have 2 9s again. So I think the more balanced team now for this game is to have those forwards. And once again, to what we expect from Bristol, you know, they're going to try to keep the ball in hand. That means they're going to challenge our forwards. So we'll probably need some fresh legs later on in the game.
Thanks, Zina. Just for Stick, you mentioned the playing conditions. You know, Pat Lam from Bristol Bears, he's got obviously a New Zealand background. They like to play or throw the ball around. Do you think that they will, you know, they can adapt to the situation because they play there more often than you guys, or how do you see it going with the style of play?
No doubt going to change how they play, you know, because remember they live here, they spend probably almost 90% of their training time in those conditions. They're used to those conditions. So for them, it's not a challenge to play in the wet conditions, you know. So I don't think they're going to move away from their DNA. You know, when it comes to New Zealand philosophy, they always want to keep ball in play. And you also look at a couple of their players in their team, they've got a squad. So I don't think they'll move away from it. And the conditions, like if you saw also last week, the brilliant tries that were scored by Munster, you know, where they could send the ball into space, where sometimes when we wanted to send the ball wide into spaces, there were a lot of errors there, bad passes, and then also drop passes. So it shows that we're not used to the conditions, you know, even though, yes, it's good now we've got our URC teams playing in the Northern Hemisphere, but probably it's going to pay off in the future. But for now, I think we're still behind it. So I doubt Bristol will change how they want to play the game.
Coach, I almost said the Beckham twins. The Dupree twins made a very big impact when they came on against Munster. And I mean, they disappeared from the South Africa or the Springbok scene and everything. Do you see them playing a bigger role in future, or is it going to be back to the normal?
But those guys are they're gonna play in big games in the future, no doubt at all. You know, every time when they got an opportunity, they always lift their hands up. You know, so I know at the moment they're not in a mix with the Springboks, but once again, you can never question their potential. You know, you can never question how they play the game. and they always bring massive physical impact in the game. And you saw exactly what happened last week with Jael starting the game. He was one of the key players in giving us that momentum in the game. And then when he came off the bench with the guys like Skumbuza, the impact they've got, I'm talking with ball in hand now and giving us that momentum. And even when we were required to defend, they put some physical tackles in that game. So no doubt at all that they will play more test matches in the future, because I know they've got a bright future ahead of themselves.
Yeah, so just the last thing from me, Zina, Stick, if you look at the players that you have in your side and the skill set and the ability to attack and also in this, the side that played on Saturday against that loss, but everybody looked at that game and said you guys gave an excellent performance. And looking at where they attack from, is that perhaps something going forward that you guys will look at in building on your game plan, where you also attack, when it's on from your own half?
I think the same goes with the review that we had with the SAA squad against Munster. We spoke about the opportunity that we've created in the game, and it felt like for me as a coach, the guys didn't really look excited, and it's something that we always encourage them to look for those opportunities and to get excited, because that's actually the reason that made them who they are. And if you look at the guys on the outside, guys like Lelo Zas and Suleiman, those guys, it's players that whenever they get the ball in hand, they always get some energy, But I felt like last week we didn't really get that. I don't know, maybe the occasion was just too much for them or too big for them, but that is spoke about it, to look for opportunities. When it's on for them to take the ball wide, they must take it. So yes, it's part of our plan and we always want to grow into it.
Thanks, Zina. How's it, guys? How's it, Stocker? All good in yourself. With the struggles of the Boks with their 2 losses on tour and you guys last week, has that added a bit of extra pressure to this game? To try and get one up for the national side now on this end of year tour. And then I think you might have answered part of the question from Nathan there, that my other question on, were you not wanting to get a bit more game time into Johan, with another start there?
Yeah, first things first, being involved in the Springboks, and wearing a Springbok jersey for the players and also being involved as a coach, there's always a pressure. Our country, how passionate people are when it comes to the Springbok environment, so we know we're always under pressure, and then second thing, us being on tour and not getting the results, I think I can't fault our players, the way we fought against France, and being for 70 minutes, the way we played with 14 men, and then also at some stage where we had 13 guys on the field. So we can't really fault the commitment our players they showed in that game. And then unfortunately, certain calls didn't go our way, and we know it's part of the game, and there's nothing we can do about the match officials, So I think we must just give credit to our players, even though we were all disappointed at losing, but the way we've lost the game, I think we really, really gave it all, we gave it all. We wanted to win the game so badly, but certain things are not in our control, So yeah, once again, we were disappointed, but we'll keep fighting to get those results, Once again, yes, we understand we're under pressure. We need those results, but in a Springbok jersey, you're always under pressure. And then what was the second one?
Johan question.
Oh, about giving the guys the opportunity again to play the team. Yeah, you know what? We only got 2 games on Cambros, so it's tough to say, okay, I want to give other guys also second opportunity to build on what they've done in the first game. But on the other side, also it will be unfair not to give the other guys that were also on the bench, an opportunity. So I don't think for me, I've got the luxury, to say I'm building, for games was about the results and also giving guys opportunities. So we didn't get the results in the first game, and then this one, the main goal for me was to give also other guys some opportunity to show what they can do also for us. But otherwise, I can't say and lie in front of people and say no, I'm trying to build. There's nothing that I'm building onto. We just want the results, and we want to also give players opportunities.